wants to do code in 5? 5 minutes for code? Oh, hell. Bring it, boy. Code in 5.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Code in 5. My name is Paul Abernathy, your host, and welcome to the podcast where we analyze the code, hopefully, roughly around 5 minutes or less. So today's episode, we'll be talking about tray cable, type TC cable, and it's also found in Article 336. But what we do want to talk about before we get to this, the uses permitted, not permitted, is that many people have been contacting me where they saw that in the 2020 edition of the NEC, that under 230.43, item number 20, which is a new item to the service entrance conductors list, that tray cable TCER was added to that list. And I'm happy to say that that is true. We did add TCER to that list. However, it does tend to throw people off a little bit because once you see that in that list, they think, well, okay, that means that I could use it outside on the side of a building exposed and treat it just like a SER cable, for example, or an SEU cable. And the answer to that has to send us to Article 336. Now, Article 336, just because we have the permission to use tray cable for service entrance applications, you got to go look at 336.10 and .12 for uses permitted and uses not permitted. For example, under uses permitted, tray cable is perfectly fine for power, lighting, control, and signaling circuits. It's okay in cable trays, even those that are not continuous. The ones that might be segmented, as long as that segmentation is not more than 12 inches. It allows you to put tray cable in a raceway. It allows you to support it on a messenger. Of course, you got to meet all the rules in 396 for messenger applications. I can use it for Class 1 circuits as permitted by Part 2 and Part 3 of Article 725. Incidentally, that's 336.10, item number 5, if you're following along. Number 6 says that I can use it for non-power limited fire alarm circuits as long as it's consistent with 730.49. So that's another use of tray cable. It also allows me to use it between a cable tray and utilization equipment. So I'm going from the cable tray and extending down to the piece of equipment. Although you have some allowances to support and you have an exception if it's not more than 6 feet, but there's different rules in there. There's A, B, C, D, E, and F that you have to follow, but there is an exception that you can apply if it's applicable to your installation. Number 8 talks about making sure that it's rated for moisture and corrosive agents such as a wet location. And of course, in our case, if tray cable is listed for direct burial, then it is rated for that type of application. Of course, number 9 is talking about 1 and 2 family dwellings. And this is the one where you're allowed to use it like for a generator where it has both power and the control of the generator in the same cable assembly. But we also see for this in use in what's called mini-split HVAC applications where you have the power conductors and you have one of them that's being used as a signaling component. That's where you typically would see these. It's very limited, again, 1 and 2 family, but it also has to have both power and control to be applicable in this allowance, right? So you can't just use it anywhere, right? Then number 10 is talking about direct burial. So if your tray cable is listed for direct burial, then it can go straight into the ground. It's okay. And then lastly, 11 talks about hazardous classified locations. Now, if somewhere else in the code, like maybe Article 501, 502, 503 of hazardous classified locations, if they make reference to a tray cable application, then there you go. You're okay. As long as it's a specific type of tray cable, whether it's a hazardous location, HL classification, it's still tray cable. So it gives you the allowance to go to other locations. Now, what we want to talk about is the uses not permitted. Now, for example, it says it's not to be installed where exposed to physical damage. That's 336.12, item number 1. Number 2 says, look, you cannot install tray cable outside of a raceway or cable tray except as permitted in 336.10.4, which was on a messenger, 336.10.7, which is from the cable tray to the equipment, that unique application, 336.10.9, that's the one for use in 1 and 2 family dwellings, and then, of course, 336.10, which is direct burial. So nowhere in here does it give me permission to run a TCER on the surface of a building exteriorly, interiorly, except for where permitted in, for example, 336.10.9 for 1 and 2 family. Other than that, it's not permitted. So again, hopefully that answers your question.
Can we do code in 5? Who wants to do code in 5? 5 minutes for code.